This is Pat Prescott, host of Favorite Things on 88.3 WBGO, and I'm delighted today to be talking to drummer and composer Kendrick Scott. He's got a new release out called Corridors on Blue Note. It's a follow up to his well received album, A Wall Becomes a Bridge. And this project, originally a commissioned work, 8 original compositions, and one new arrangement of a Bobby Hutcherson tune are in there. And we're really happy to have you join us, Kendrick, to
Oh,
talk
thanks for
all about Corridors.
thank you so
Thanks for
much.
being here. Tell us about the original commission, what it was that you were commissioned to do, and how this evolved into this project.
Well, originally, the Jazz Gallery contacted me, Rio, and she wanted me to do just write some new music. The Jazz Gallery has played a huge part in my development as a band leader, as the Jazz Gallery was the first place that I played with my own band in New York. And before then, I wasn't even really contemplating having a band. So they've always, Leslie and Dale and Roy and Rio, God bless Dale's soul. And they just always wanted to always have pushed me. So Rio was like, "You need to be writing some new music. You need to be doing something." And during the pandemic, I was just sitting here in a funk, and uh, that gave me some inspiration to write something. And I just wrote about being here in my place.
And that's what it's all about. Just I think that for many people during the pandemic, it was a great source of sorrow, but also a great source of inspiration, and that we were forced to just be still.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I always say that I was forced to deal with the shadows that I could run from. In my travels, in my touring, and all the great things that happen, there are always those things that are on your back that are like, oh, I'll deal with that later. Then you have to sit at home and it's sitting right here looking at you and say, what's up?
Right.
You
And
know,
especially in the life of a working musician, because
absolutely.
this is what you do, is to work. When you work for yourself, you've got to
Absolutely.
do it all, and there's so much that's involved: the conceiving what you're doing, and then the rehearsing, and then the traveling, and then promoting what you. There's a lot of work in being a musician.
It really is. It takes a lot of love. Uh, Stefan Harris actually says something great. He's like, there's a difference between love and discipline. Discipline, you get up and you do these things all the time. The love, you don't even think about it. You just do it.
That's right.
And that's where I'm at with the music. So I'm blessed to be able to do that as a for a living.
One of the interesting things about Corridors is the fact that you used really different voicing in your trio. You got saxophone, bass, and drum trio. Why this concept?
Well, mainly I was thinking about my band Oracle, and which I've done a lot of a few recordings. So while I'm sitting at home, I was thinking about what have we collectively and what have I lost or has been taken away from me. And I was thinking about travel. I was thinking about relationships with people, being able to see people. And I was like, okay, so I got to make that in sonic form with my band. And I was thinking the things that I love most are chordal instruments. And I said, okay, let me take that out. That was really scary. That was so scary because I love chords and like, oh, that's like the beauty of my music. I think.
This
It's,
is self deprivation at its best.
yeah, yeah. And so I was like, okay, let's take that out. And what do we have left? And you have the bass and the saxophone. And what it really does is it provides a whole new sonic space and uh, a lot of moving room for those three elements to happen and to interact with each other. So I really enjoyed it actually.
Yeah,
Something.
so since most trios really are built around the piano or guitar, because those are the ones that do get to play all the chords and stuff. What were some of the biggest challenges of making this concept overcome that, or to fill in the space that was left by those instruments, I guess?
Well, for me, it's that I write most of my songs on the piano. So I'm hearing those lush elements of harmony the whole time. So the challenge for me was to think more, I don't know, think about the lines, how the lines meet and all those things rather than the harmony in between. And then
Right.
also for me, uh, thinking as a drummer, thinking about what does it sound for me to play harmony? You know what I mean? What is
Yeah.
it for me to create those chordal movements and for the listener to hear that something is happening other than the bass note changing? How I can shade sections and make you feel like you're transitioning into something different. And all of those challenges happen in that form. And then I take on the comping role of the pianist as well. Um,
Right.
being a drummer. So it's actually very beautiful, listening to all
It,
the greats play trio records.
yeah. And there's some really interesting things that are happening with that bass and drum part of it too. That kind of really sets a foundation for the whole thing that's happening on the record, I think.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, Reuben has been a good friend of mine since 1998 when I moved up to Boston and I went to Berklee College of Music, and Reuben was still in town, and so I've been playing with Reuben since then. And the relationship just has grown, and that's my big brother. He ushered me into the industry, and we've gotten to play in so many different situations with Joshua Redman, with Charles Lloyd, with Helen Sung.
Hmm.
It's a lot of great artists. So we're always having great conversations, as well as his band, musical conversations and conversations off the bandstand. So
Yeah.
love
One
it.
more thing about the record, then I want to talk a little bit about your background and some of the really cool things that you're doing to keep the music alive. And that is, I have a question about, a wall becomes a bridge and corridors. Both seem to be about more than music, right? Isn't this also kind of about your life philosophy? Explain those two things. Like, how something that seems like an obstacle or something that seems like it takes us away from each other can actually bring us together. Is that
Absolutely.
is that what where that's coming from a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm a church boy and was born and raised in the Baptist church. And what they tell you is, see yourself on the other side of the storm while you're in the storm, or before you get to the storm. And one of those things that I had to constantly tell myself because I was going crazy in here in my New York apartment during the pandemic was just think about what good is going to come out of it. Take the bricks, take the bricks from the wall and create the bridge. You know what I mean? Do that now before you even just walking into the wall and beating on the wall and saying this is terrible. Change your mindset. And so that's things that I've been dealing with in therapy and
Mhm, mhm.
and music is cathartic for me. Music is cathartic, and life can be cyclical in that way where it's just like you think you've dealt with something, but then there's another wall that you have to approach, um,
Yeah,
that you have to deal with. And I think for me, the cathartic nature of music helps me in my quest to become just a better person and human being. And that's from my time spent with Herbie Hancock. That was one of my best lessons was just learning how to be a great human being, and that reflects in your music every time. So
exactly.
the more you grow, and the more you're challenging yourself, the better the music will become because that's the life that you live.
Exactly. You mentioned being a church kid. So let's go back to some of the beginnings in Houston, which I gotta say, there must have been something in the water in Houston with all the great artists that has come out of that place. And I see that one of your mentors really was someone from Houston who meant the most to me. Someone I got a chance to get to know and just admired so much as an artist and as a man as well. And I'm talking about Joe Sample. But
Absolutely.
before we talk about Joe, let's talk a little bit about your mom though, and about the gospel roots and how that has impacted everything that you do today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Before I even knew how to sit down at the drums and play the drums, it was just about going to church every Sunday, going to choir rehearsal, going going to prayer meeting, and all of those things. And just for me seeing the drums, and then listening to the music and saying, "Oh, this is amazing." And I remember I was sitting in a service one day, and I was young, and I remember it was probably but right before the preacher got up to sing, they were singing a song, and I remember the hairs rose up on my body, and I got this chill in my body. And the lead singer was just she was just soaring, and the message was so beautiful. And I was like, I want to do that. And honestly, I've been chasing that feeling ever since. Every time I play, I say I want somebody to feel that while I'm playing. And the greatest thing that I learned from coming up in the church is that is the music is for a message. You know what I mean? When you think about drumming, the beginnings of drumming, what was that for? You know, to talk to tribe for communication. And if we're here to communicate, then that's what our music should be about. What are we communicating with our music? We sometimes we don't realize how powerful it is because sometimes I get a little dark on some musics that people aren't really realizing the power of what they're doing. You know,
Exactly. You know.
using music the wrong way. So I just believe that music is for a message. My mom taught me that, you know, coming up in the church playing with her. And then also in my high school days, the band in my church was me and Mark Kelly from the Roots and Robert Glasper.
Hard to mess that up.
Yeah, yeah. So we had a great time playing the church. That's where I come from.
Yeah, but what certainly Joe though was one of the OGs. Talk about Mr. Sample and what his mentorship meant to you.
Oh yeah, I mean his mentorship meant everything. He had lived in LA forever after coming from Houston, and he decided to move back to Houston. And
Hmm.
he and Walter Smith and Mark Kelly and I think Richard Cruz was the pianist. We were playing at his homecoming party, and you know, so we're the kids in the corner, and everybody's coming in, and I'm like, oh, there's no way he's listening to us. And so, you know, they have this big party, and all of a sudden they're like, Joe, you should go play with the kids. Go play with the kids. I'm like, oh, okay. He's gonna come play with us. He sat down and played with us, and it was cool. I still don't remember what it sounded like. I remember being happy, but I don't remember what it sounded like. And then I just went up to Berklee College of Music. 5 years later, Joe calls Walter Smith's dad, Walter Smith Jr., and says, "Who was that kid that I played with at the party?" And they called me to audition for the Crusaders. So I tell all of my students, I'm like, y'all think people aren't listening? You think people aren't paying attention? And you think you don't leave something with people? And that was my main one where I'm just like, whoa, 5 years later. So then I auditioned for the Crusaders and I joined the Crusaders. And being under Joe's tutelage was really, really wild because he really cut you down to what's the most important thing that you're doing, right? Grooving. It's like the other stuff
Hmm.
is cool. He's like grooving and whatever you play. And you know, I get a little fancy and he's like, nope. Nope, just play me some groove. You know, give me that shuffle, give me that, you know, that oomph. I want to be moving in my seat. I want to be, you know, and that's what I learned from him, you know, playing with the Crusaders. And it was wild because at the time when I did finally leave Berklee, I was playing with Terrence Blanchard and with the Crusaders at the same time. So my mind was just like, you know, Terrence was like, play whatever you want. And Joe was like, play this. And so that was the best because, you
The
know,
best of both worlds, really.
it was the best of both worlds because now
Yeah.
I know my place when I'm presented. You know, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, go ahead and do your thing, or no, this is what the music needs. I just learned to be of service. He
Hmm.
was the main person that taught me to be of service because I mean, originally for a young person, you think jazz is freedom. You're like, oh, it's freedom. I do whatever I want, And Joe was like, no, it's being of service. So if you're of service
Yeah,
and you're playing a strong groove, that's cool. And if you're playing a strong groove and being more exploratory, that's cool too. But you got to know how to do the whole range, you know. So
exactly.
he was the person that hit me to get into the range of what it really means to be a jazz musician.
And now, fast forward to today, and you get a chance to return the favor, working with some great young people at the Manhattan School of Music. What is it that you love most about teaching? And what are your students teaching you?
Well, I love most of all, I love passing along the lessons that I've learned so far, and also learning. I guess they teach me more about uh, how do I say that? They teach me. Wow, that's hard. Let me see. How do I approach that? Okay, so definitely what I love the most is seeing them succeed on the little bit of information that I have learned so far. You know, whenever I
Hmm.
teach, I tell people, look, I'm just teaching you what I've learned so far because there's so much left for me to learn. And in in return for me, I'm learning so much about what I need to be doing as a teacher and as a player, and as an individual. So it's this I think it's this symbiosis of you know, I read somewhere it says there's no word for teaching and learning at the same time, and there needs to be one. You know what I mean? So that it's a circular thing that I can see. You know, they're teaching me and I'm teaching them, and we're just here on this journey. We might be in different places in it, but I still feel like I'm getting to witness the beginnings of some great careers
Yeah.
that
And you seem to be enjoying that. I think there's something really special about that part of it. I've taught, and and there is a whole thing. You do get a lot back from it that
absolutely,
sometimes is a surprise to you as you get into it.
absolutely, and sometimes you don't even know how big your impact is. You know,
Hmm.
especially with young kids. You know, sometimes they're rolling their eyes and then they come back. It's like, actually, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and I always
Yeah.
tell my teachers, I always tell my students, I'm like, I hate to tell you this, but now that I'm older, I'm gonna tell you what my teacher told you and told
Hmm.
me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm gonna tell you that. And it's always those things that are so simple and pointed
Yeah.
and so beautiful. It takes you back to the simplicity of things, and I just
Yeah.
love.
It's like I always tell my mother, the older I get, the smarter she gets. And that's
Uh,
that's a real thing right there. But
that's
I
a
want
good.
to end on this and something I saw on your website, and that is a link for drum lessons. And I'm sure we got some people who are watching or listening to this conversation right now who are aspiring drummers, because there are a
Yes,
lot of them out there. So tell us how people can contact you to find out about the drum lessons.
yeah. I mean, my if you go to my website, it goes to my email. It's just Kendrick at kendrickscott.com. They can email me and contact me about lessons. I love to share, like I just said, what I learned so far on my journey, and to be available for the next generation of talent or whoever would like to, you know, take some lessons.
And we appreciate you doing that and for making the music too and for keeping it coming.
Thank you. I
I've enjoyed
appreciate it.
talking to you today. We certainly hope that you're going to check out Corridors. That is the latest from drummer and composer Kendrick Scott. And thanks for spending some time with us today on WBGO.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm drummer Kendrick Scott, and I fell in love with jazz when I heard Miles Davis's My Funny Valentine. And in the middle of one of the tunes, I can't remember which one, but there's somebody in the audience, and it's a really tense moment in the music, and he says, "Yeah," and I remember that feeling because I felt the same way. I got so much joy out of just the intensity of that moment, and I said, you know what? That's like when the hairs raised on my body when I was in church as a little kid. And I said, you know what? Wow, I want to play jazz. And that was it at age 14.
Love it.
Yeah.